The time I made a condescending coworker question her sanity. Back in fall of 2018, I scored a seasonal gig as a production assistant for a weeks-long art festival in the Midwest. I loved the other production assistants I worked with. We were a pretty motley crew in terms of age and interests, but somehow hit it off really well as a group. Even upper management was awesome, so we had a lot of fun together. Suffice to say I loved my coworkers, all but one. Let's call her Condescending Connie. At our morning stand-ups, Condescending Connie managed to take credit for everything that got done the day before, despite not having lifted a finger to help us. She even managed to aim subtle put-downs to the person who actually did the work without her help, implying that we were the ones who sat on our asses. She never outright said this though. She was careful to toe the line short of saying outright lies we could call her out on, but of course this didn't sit right with me. So, one of my tasks as a production assistant was stocking and tagging merchandise for the art festival's gift shop. Just after I finished using the tagging gun to price some t-shirts, Condescending Connie threw her jacket behind the shop counter, ignoring my hello, and walked back out again. I don't know what synapses fired in my brain to give me this idea, but I picked up her jacket and took out the pricing gun to punch a price tag fastener through the clothing label. You know, one of those little pieces of plastic that get left behind on the label when you try to rip the price tag off by hand. I don't know what I was thinking, but I put her jacket away a little happier knowing it might be a mildly irritating inconvenience. Wouldn't you know it, a few weeks later I was again tasked with pricing new hats and shirts and such and noticed that Condescending Connie had left her jacket behind. She had apparently removed the little plastic nib I left earlier, so I took the liberty of punching a new one in. This continued over the course of my seasonal job. Every 2 to 6 weeks or so, I would sporadically punch a little price tag fastener through the hats and scarves and jackets she left behind the counter. Because Condescending Connie had never actually seen anyone use the pricing gun, and because it's such a minor little thing to happen over the course of multiple articles of clothing over months of time, it never seemed to occur to her that someone was doing this behind her back. I'm pretty sure she legitimately questioned her sanity by the end, wondering if she could trust her clear-as-day memories of cutting the plastic tag piece away only to find it intact days or weeks later. One afternoon in the lunchroom I overheard Condescending Connie talking to someone on the phone and actually saying something to the effect of, "I think I'm losing my mind." That made me feel guilty enough that I decided to address her later and own up to my prank, but as soon as she ended the call I heard her raise her voice with an elderly volunteer for setting some pamphlets down in the wrong area. So, needless to say, I kept going. Even when she moved her jacket and bags and such to different hiding spots, I found ways to smuggle in the price gun and punch in another tag fastener. I regret nothing. My beef's neighbor was an asshole, so I fucked with him as much as possible using only his address. Backstory: my BF, 30M, has interacted with his neighbor, 30M, exactly once in the 3 years he lived in his apartment complex. For some godforsaken reason, literally on the night I was helping him pack up to move the next morning, this neighbor knocks on the door and asks why we always slam the door. To preface, I actually totally sympathize. If you let this door close by just letting go of the handle, without pushing it at all, the door does shut pretty heavily. So, I can see how that would be irritating if the door isn't carefully closed every time, even though nobody is slamming it. My BF said sorry, it just shuts like that, we're packing and didn't have a hand to close it, but I'm moving out in the morning so you won't have to worry about it anymore unless you want to take it up with the complex management to see if they can change how it closes. This was not a sufficient answer for the asshole neighbor. We're still not sure what his deal was, we think he was drunk, but he kept demanding an answer even after we reiterated that it was an accident, and that we were leaving in the morning for forever, so there wasn't anything else we could do at that point. Eventually we had to just shut the door on him as he escalated to screaming insults at us, calling my BF a pussy for not wanting to fight him. He proceeded to try and beat down the door, not an exaggeration, he was hitting it and kicking it so hard I thought he would succeed, occasionally going inside his apartment to bang and kick on the walls there too. He also tried knocking on the door and covering the peephole to trick us into opening the door lol. I was honestly scared to leave at that point. After over an hour of this we called building security, it's a huge complex, who apparently found him sitting in front of my beef's door when they finally got there. He kept at it after they left for a while. When he finally gave up after over 2 hours, he stole my partner's doormat on his way back inside. Why this man never once in 3 years spoke one word to my BF or his roommate about the door noise if it was bothering him, I have no idea, but after his psychotic behavior I had no sympathy left for him. Petty revenge. Armed with only one piece of information about this guy, his address, I managed to track down his name. I signed him up for every free snail mail subscription I could find, including as many adult content magazines as possible. I sent him hundreds of free government pamphlets about alcohol abuse, STDs, and forest fires. I sent him a load of recovery program brochures. I requested a visit from the Jehovah's Witnesses on his behalf. I anonymously sent him a trophy shaped like a giant dick inscribed with, "Number 1 Dickhead." I refrained from sending a glitter bomb only because I want him to keep opening his mail, just in case I can think of anything else to do. This absolute troglodyte of a person doesn't even know our names, let alone where my BF moved or where I live, so even if he suspects my BF there's nothing he can do. Finally, to put the cherry on the petty sundae, I stole his doormat on our last visit to the apartment. I only wish I could be a fly on the wall when he starts putting it together. Boss didn't approve my time off. I'm a single mum of a 2-year-old. We currently live with my parents because I found out I was pregnant less than a month before the lockdown started. I don't have my license yet, work in progress, so my parents are our only mode of transportation. They bought plane tickets to go out of state for my cousin's graduation from June 2nd 5th. I wasn't able to get tickets for me and my daughter because I couldn't afford it. Well, I asked my boss for those days off, on May 12th, so there was plenty of notice. But she refused because it wasn't my vacation, and there are Ubers with car seats. For context, I work at a preschool and she goes there with half tuition. I'm not comfortable putting my daughter in a stranger's car no matter who they are or how safe it is. My boss told me if I didn't set up transportation then I would be written up for a no-call no-show. Cue the petty revenge. I told my parents how upset I was about this because I couldn't find a single solution that would appease my boss without sacrificing my boundaries and potentially putting my daughter in danger. So they bought us plane tickets on the condition that I pay them back with a little from each paycheck. I can't wait to tell my boss and show her the flight confirmation when she comes back to work tomorrow. Update: I just got off work, so I'm sorry for making ya wait, but my job is still intact. I spoke to my boss first thing this morning and showed her the flight confirmation as well as telling her, thanks for that advice. I won't be available those days. I was approved by the end of the day and my boss even told me to enjoy my trip. No repercussions, no write-ups, no hard feelings. Thanks for everyone's input, opinions, and concerns.